Hey, we're live.
Hey everyone, welcome to this Tuesday's edition of Hook, Line, and Striker.
We're here with Bobby
and Robin.
Hi, you guys.
Hi.
How's it going?
Not so bad.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So last week we were with Dave Wasness. We had a really great time. We talked a lot about, fishing with kids, fishing organizations, and catching walleyes. But this week we are looking forward to some perch.
Yeah, you guys have been really busy out there the last couple of years, but this year especially, it's been good weather. You guys have had good ice. So
with that, tell us a little bit about yourselves and, where you're at.
Sure. So I'm Bob Shindelar, and this is Robin Shindelar, my wife. We started the Western Ice Fishing Association about 3.5 years ago, and we've been active fishermen, women, couple for quite a while. I'm originally from Wisconsin and been living here in Idaho the last 10 or so years, and just recently moved to Washington. Lake Cascade is a lake that we have been fishing for the last 10 or 11 years now. And I was fortunate enough to tie the Idaho state record for jumbo yellow perch in 2012 with a 2-pound, 11-ounce jumbo yellow perch. It was an awesome day, and things kind of sprung up from there. So pretty much grew up fishing my whole life, and have the fortune to work with some great companies now in the fishing industry, and sharing the experience of fishing and sharing our knowledge, and also being able to learn from others. Robin?
Yep, and I'm Robin, as Bobby introduced me, and I don't have the state record, but I'm hoping to be the next state record. But I married a state record winner. I've pretty much been fishing my whole entire life as well, and ice fishing probably the majority of my life, I can say now that I'm older. And Cascade is like you mentioned, pretty much our home lake, our favorite, that we fish the most and enjoy. I'm by heart a panfish chaser. He likes the bigger species, but that kind of complements us because I make him get to lakes that he wouldn't normally go to, and vice versa. So it works out really well.
Well, and when you're out there, you get panfish and big fish kind of all rolled into one.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the neat things about the West, is that there's a variety of lakes and water bodies, and a lot of people, when they think about the Western United States, they think about trout, and that there's only trout out here. But really, there's great opportunities depending on where you go to catch most of the same fish that you'd find in the Midwest, and through the ice belt. You can find good perch waters, bluegill, and northern pike, walleye, bass, you name it. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That is. So I was going to ask you a question about perch, because to be honest, I'm getting excited to talk about it. But before we even do that, we should really mention that, you guys even do a lot of outreach, not just in your area, but even beyond that. So with the Western Ice Fishing Association, tell us a little bit about that before we get too far.
So the Western Ice Fishing Association started out basically as a need that we kept hearing from people, of folks wanting information about ice fishing and how to get into the sport, how to do it safely, what kind of equipment and gear do they need to go on the ice. And so we kept addressing so many questions from people from all over the country, but primarily in the West, that really did not know much about ice fishing. And so my wife and I started this conversation, had this idea of starting something new to help folks learn more about ice fishing. And after 2 years of talking about it, we finally just went ahead and did it. We created the Western Ice Fishing Association, and it started off on Facebook, and then it grew to Instagram, and then also into YouTube. And really, there's 5 main things that we try to focus with the Western Ice Fishing Association. And that is one, getting kids outdoors, teaching them about ice fishing, and getting their parents to go out there with them. And so we host events at different places across the West to help with getting kids outside. We work with a great organization called Idaho Youth Outdoors. Last year, we were able to give away 600 ice rod reel combinations to youth, which was an awesome event. We helped host a fundraising tournament on Lake Cascade. It's called the Hard Water Classic, and that's where we raise the funds to buy all the ice rod reel combos for those kids. The other thing that we try to do is we share information about ice safety and what to look for going out on the ice, the proper gear to have, the ice suits, the warm clothing, the flotation that you can find in the striker suits, having cleats and those kinds of things. So if we focus on ice safety, to share that information with folks, the last thing we want to see is people get hurt in the sport, because there's no reason for anybody to get hurt enjoying this sport. It's a lot of fun, and it is very safe. And then the other things that we focus on is sharing fisheries information of what's going on with fisheries management. We also promote access. One of the most challenging things that we have for Western waters is getting access for ice fishermen onto public waters, whether that's plowing the parking lots, keeping restrooms open, having areas where ice fishermen and women can offload their snowmobiles, offload their equipment and gear, park, and be able to get out onto the ice and have that public access. So we've had great successes working with different state agencies, whether it's Fish and Game or state parks, or working with counties on getting some of those parking lots opened up and roads, plowed, so we can get access to the lakes and to the different rivers that are out there, so we can enjoy the sport. And then the last thing that we do with the association is we share information about all the new technology and gear that's out there related to ice fishing, whether it's lures, rods, reels, the tackle. There's so many advances right now in ice fishing, and so we want to share that information about what's out there, the products that are available to folks, so they can have an enjoyable experience.
That's awesome.
Well, and what I appreciate about kind of the things that you were saying there is there's a lot of things in there that people really take for granted and, don't realize are all a part of it. So, I'm going to kind of pick on, in a nice way, Minnesota for a hot minute, because, their boat launches oftentimes have bathrooms or like garbage cans or, bait returns, just to throw things away in economical ways. They're very kept launch, in Wisconsin here. I mean, I guess I'm going to pick on us. We have to pay for our ramps. Who knows if there's bumper on docks, who knows if it's plowed or not. And, to even be able to get out onto the ice, like you're saying, when your association works with things like that, the access, that's a huge piece of what goes into being a great angler.
Well, and not only that, but to have a central location where you can talk to some people that know where all the access points are. That's half the battle. Most of the time I'm looking on Google Earth, looking, scrolling around looking for boat ramps and parking lots along water bodies just to find a place to get on a body of water. So that's really cool to have that information accessible.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's exactly the other thing that you're saying, is that you're kind of an information hub. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, really quick, get this in there. We have people, watching. If you do have comments, if you have anything to add to the conversation, leave that in the comments and we will certainly address that or get back to you. And hey, if you're painting crankbaits while you're doing that, that looks like a good afternoon. So can't wait to hear what else we talk about. Awesome. So I guess as far as, fishing here to there, is it very similar? Is it different? You said that you grew up in Wisconsin and you kind of moved out. Can you give us a hint of what that looks like?
So the fishing techniques will work here in the West just as much as they do in the Midwest. The thing that we see that's really different when you come to the Western states is the availability of products available for ice fishermen and women to get on the ice. The selection is much less in the Western stores. So you're not going to have the huge selections of lures and rods and reels to choose from. And so that's one of the things that we really have done with the association, and by doing our ice fishing seminars, is to educate folks on what's available to them. A lot of products, are ordered online now, and so things are shipped in from other places. But even the tackle shops that are in our area, we visit with the owners, we visit with the department managers, and we educate them about ice fishing. And what we're seeing is a tremendous growth in the sport for ice fishing in Western states. when I first started fishing on Lake Cascade 10, 11 years ago, you'd see maybe a couple dozen ice fishermen out on that lake. And this is a 27,000 acre lake. And even today, the numbers have grown quite significantly from then, but the numbers are still low. And there's a lot of lakes and places that have very little ice fishing pressure as compared to the Midwest. So there's some great opportunities to get out, and you can spread out on other lakes and fish, the species that you're looking for by just doing a little research with Fish and Game departments and doing a little, research on what's available out there. But I would say that is probably the biggest thing, is that some of the products that we have in the Midwest, you can't find them here. And so when we bring back things or we show things, sometimes it surprises people, the technology and rods and reels these days and the kinds of lures that are available to you, and just the gear, having ice suits and shanties,
no ice houses like back there by no means.
Yeah.
Our ice isn't thick enough.
So that's that education, process. And so we're seeing more products being brought in to the different fishing departments in the stores out here. I've had a number of businesses that have told me that they've quadrupled their ice fishing inventory, and it keeps growing. It's doubling every year because there's getting to be more and more people interested in the sport, and they're realizing that it's family oriented. It's relatively cheap to get into when you first start out, and you can expand from there. And so, and then the other thing is that people are realizing it is a safe sport, and it's a lot of fun.
So then, as far as the fishing, we have a comment here, and I guess it's exactly what I had in my mind. So as far as even your fishing technique out here, I don't know if you've ever been to Lake Ogibic that we have it's Michigan, right?
Yeah, it's in the UP.
So that's really a dead stick technique. That is like a very specific technique. And, oftentimes you recommend people to get a guide. So is it more of a situation like that, or do you have a very aggressive bite that you get to handle?
Well, I would say we have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, absolutely.
My technique when I go on Lake Cascade is I always have a dead stick, and I also actively jig. And so Idaho has very generous ice fishing regulations. You're allowed 5 lines per person. And so, you can have tip ups, you can have jaw jackers, you can have a dead stick, and you can jig, but
we always have.
And sometimes, 5 lines is too much. You can't keep up. So but I would say is that the technique of using a dead stick is very effective on Lake Cascade, but so is jigging. These jumbo yellow perch that are on Lake Cascade are very aggressive, and they are the main predator in the lake. And those fish are so big, they're not afraid to come up off the bottom. And it's not uncommon to have perch suspended 5-6 feet off the bottom, and they're cruising. And versus a lot of other, Midwest lakes, a lot of those perch would normally just hug the bottom, and to get a perch to come 2 feet off the bottom, they make themselves vulnerable and they're exposed.
Yeah.
And they're a smaller fish. So,
and depending on the day is whether or not the dead stick is going to work or not. So you may have your dead stick and you may have your jigging rod, but if the active jigging isn't working, you may just be holding your jigging rod. Oh. And then there's other days that you're literally thrashing it around, slamming the bottom and moving it, and they're whop coming in. And then there's other days where it's like, boom, boom. You have everything.
Well, so I'm assuming that you have quite a bit of underwater topography out there, and some pretty good bottom transitions and stuff. Lake Ogibic is a big mud flat, essentially, and so even though like those perch, they rival the size of the Cascade perch, but the thing is that their main forage is wigglers. So if you breathe on your dead stick, if it's a windy day and you have your dead stick outside, they won't touch it. Like it's literally like deer hunting. You have to be as still and focused as you can.
There are days like that.
And that's where like the snare rods by JT are really helpful, because You know, we go out with Guy Sibley and he puts out a big spread of those, and he can follow the perch around just by watching which the rods go off. But yeah, there is no touching of anything up there. But that's just because they don't have to chase anything. They're going around basically just eating all the little slow bugs, you know. But out there, I'm sure most of the forage is probably bait fish, correct?
Yeah, and it depends on the year. So generally, that is the case. So on Lake Cascade, their primary food source is going to be other perch minnows from that year. Now we have years where the minnow production is very low, and it has to do with water quality. And so there's been years where we've had die-offs on the minnows, and so the years where there's not a good minnow recruitment left in the lake coming in the winter, the fish will eat larvae, like you mentioned, and that's when they are more timid, and the dead stick can be very, very effective.
Right.
And an active jigging rod may turn them off because they haven't seen minnows in months, and they're not sure what that is, and it scares them, and they're very sluggish because these are big fish, and if they don't have good nutrition, they slow way down. However, if the minnow bite is on, active jigging, using minnow type patterns related to perch minnows, whether it's a spoon or a jigging, bait fish plastics, that is very effective. So we are big fans of JT rods as well. We use the panfish snare as well as a walleye snare for our dead sticks. And we also will set them up, and having that bait feeder reel, from the Okuma attached to that to let that line go out, and to just let those fish just gently take that bait, and then they just set the hook themselves, and it's so much fun to catch them that way. But anyway, we're very much big fans of having JT rods and having that technique specific rod to use, whether you're jigging or if you need a dead stick, it's available to you. The Rogue rod is one of my favorites for jigging.
Nice.
So then you're talking about, all these rods and kind of how much the bite can vary. So how do you then decide what you're going to actually put on the end of your line?
So I kind of wanted to answer this because it just totally made me think of all these things when he was talking. Perch are cyclic, as we probably know that if you've studied, the perch species itself, and it's like pretty much a 5-year up and down. And whenever we are on a hot bite, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, and the bite starts to decline and maybe the take is less and less, we like to actually catch, open, when you clean your fish and look to see what they're feeding on. So like last year, for example, they were thinner fish and we weren't seeing them puke up the bloodworms or minnows. But when we opened them up, we saw snails. So what did we do? We reduced down to tungsten jigs and the bite was back. So it's kind of weird, but you got to kind of scientifically really understand where they're at this year, for the pattern, for what am I going to throw at them? And when it's totally dead, you're throwing your tackle box at them basically to figure it out. Dead stick, jig, small, big, just kind of trying to figure it out where they're at.
Yeah, the last few years, it wasn't uncommon to catch a 16-inch jumbo yellow perch on Lake Cascade. And so that 16 to 17-inch fish was doable. But right now, the size of the fish has actually gone down because last year there was an algae bloom in the lake. And what we've seen going into this year is a reduction in the size of fish. So right now, the bigger fish are going to be in that 14 to 15-inch range, and you might occasionally catch a 16-inch fish. We think that in the next year or two, the size is going to increase again, but it fluctuates over time. And water quality is a big factor for Lake Cascade. And what I mean by that is the water temperature. If we have really hot summers, which is becoming more common in the West, and the reservoir, Lake Cascade is a reservoir. And so they fill it in the spring and they lower the reservoir throughout the entire summer because that water is going down out of the dam and it's going downriver, and it's utilized for rafting as well as for irrigation for farmers. And so if we have a really hot summer, and if we don't have cool summer rains periodically to cool the lake down, we get algae blooms. And so these green algae blooms have an impact by affecting the minnow production. There's less oxygen in the lake, there's more weeds, and then you have this fine green algae bloom. And our theory is that a lot of those minnows don't make it. And last winter, what we saw was we've actually had a couple algae blooms 2 years in a row now. And many of the fish last winter, they had really thin backs and thin tails, and they were big fish. And those fish are, anywhere from 10 to 14 years old by the time they get to 16, 17 inches in length. And once they spawn in the spring, they may not have enough energy to recover from the spawn, and a lot of those big fish die off after they spawn.
Mm-hmm.
And so it takes a lot of energy for those big fish to spawn, and then to be able to recover from that, it sometimes just takes them out. So most perch generally don't live past 14 years old. There have been studies where they go up to 16, sometimes 18 years old. We've actually have done age sampling on some of the gill plates on the perch ourselves, just to get those ages to figure out how old those fish are. And you can age them like a growth ring, like on a tree, on their gill plate. And so anyway, most of the fish that are in that bigger age class, like I said, are anywhere from 10 to 14 years old in Lake Cascade. So it takes a long time to get that fish to that age. And it's really important that people also understand, that conservation is very important on those big fish in Lake Cascade. Take what you need, but don't take them all. And put some of those big fish back so we have recruitment for the next year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I imagine that there's, to some extent, a good amount of tourism that comes because people, they hear about trophies, and boy, that's
a driver.
Yeah, that's
a driver.
But I've also heard, though, we were talking earlier about even just the conditions to get out there can vary greatly, and sometimes be very hard to manage. So, for somebody who has never been out there, is it the kind of thing that you can just go out and try it, or do you recommend getting a guide?
So you can just go out and try it. What I would recommend is, if you're going to do that, do your homework. Make sure that you get good maps of the lake. Spend some time talking to folks that have been there in the past, and learn from them. A guide is highly recommended as well. There are 2 outfitters that are available on Lake Cascade. There's Deadwood Outfitters, has a guide available, and then there's Southern Idaho Excursions. They also have an outfitting license on the lake. And so you can contact both of them. They have, great places to take people fishing. They provide good service.
They both book up pretty quickly.
And they book up quickly. So sometimes you have to book a year in advance to get on with either one of them. But anyway, it is doable to come out. I would suggest, if you come out and do it on your own, plan some extra time. Plan at least 4 days of getting out here to get familiar with the lake. There's so many places to fish. And access can be challenging depending on the amount of snow that we get. So sometimes the questions that we get is, should I bring a 4-wheeler or should I bring a snowmobile?
Yeah.
And more often than not, you're going to be better off with a snowmobile on Lake Cascade. And the reason for that is that the snow can be, fairly deep. There's times where there's 2 to 3 foot of snow on top of the ice. And then if you mix slush into that, it's nearly impossible to get around with a 4-wheeler or a side-by-side. And so usually a snowmobile is a pretty safe bet. But I would call in advance to one of the local tackle shops, get on our website, visit others, and see what the ice conditions are like before you leave. But even when the slush is bad, it can be difficult for snowmobiles. So we call it the slush monster. That's one of the things that's different about mountain lakes in the West compared to the Midwest is we don't have the high winds like you will in the Midwest, where you get snow and the snow blows off the lake and you're down to hard ice. The snow here will stack up, and sometimes it'll blow off, but generally once it forms, it's usually a heavy wet snow and it'll stay. And through heating, you will start to get slush. And that can impact the ice production on the lake. So if we get early snowfalls and we only have, 4 or 5 inches of ice, but you put 2 or 3 foot of snow on top of that ice, you got to wait for that snow to melt down before you start getting good ice production again. So this year we've been very fortunate in terms of we haven't had much snow across most of the West, which is another issue in terms of water quality for going into the summer, because we really rely on winter snowpack to keep the lakes cool during the summertime with runoff as the snow melts in the higher elevations, and it feeds a lot of these lakes. And so if we don't get the snowpack, that affects the water quality as well, because they'll warm up sooner in the summer. And so that longer period of hot weather can bring up the water temperatures, and it creates problems in the water. But getting back to the ice production is something that you definitely need to pay attention to when you're out in the West.
And back to the original question, yes, you can walk out, but you're going to increase your success rate if you're mobile.
Yes.
So, you're talking about having, possibly a snowmobile, being very mobile, and so getting yourself out there, and we'll talk about our gear in a second. How do you get your gear? Like, you're talking about your sensitive JT rods, you're talking about tip-ups possibly, or jaw dragger, or all of this. How do you get all of that out on the lake successfully?
Well, we are stocked up ice fishermen. So we have our own snowmobiles, and we have our otter lodges that we pull behind us on our snowmobiles. And we're able to put all of our gear in there. When you come out onto Lake Cascade, there's a number of things you need to be thinking about. Whiteout conditions is not uncommon on Cascade, whether it's from fog or if it's from blowing snow. You could very easily get out in the middle of the lake, and you now have no reference as to where the shoreline is at. So you need to have a GPS or a phone with you, navionics, something to navigate yourself back to shore.
And we can definitely tell you that happens.
There have been
many days and then turned around in whiteout conditions.
And we've had to go out in the middle of the night to help people that are lost because they can't find their way off, but they have cell coverage. That's one advantage about Lake Cascade, is it does have good cell coverage across the entire lake.
Yeah.
So, but it's something you need to be prepared for, and conditions can change in the mountains very quickly. And so what might look like a beautiful sunny day in the morning could be a totally different day later in the afternoon.
We do have pull walkout sleds as well that we take, like Cascade, for example. First ice, we go test and walk out and do some fishing. But then, as ice conditions improve, then we're on our snowmobiles.
And so there's a mountain, West Mountain is on the very west side of the lake. And in the early season, we can get downslope winds that come off of West Mountain, and that can affect the ice and it can break it up and also prevent it from forming. So wind conditions, because it is a big, massive amount of, it's the fourth largest lake in Idaho, and it's 8 miles wide at its widest portion, and it's about 20 miles long. So it's a pretty good sized lake. And early season, you got to be very cautious, as well as you get into later season. Again, take all precautions, check the ice where you go, and watch where there's different streams and rivers that feed into the lake. And you have to be careful about those inlet waters on ice conditions near those inlets. That's one of the things that we talk about.
One is even a hot springs that flows in. So you really want to know that. So you want to obviously study your waterways before you go, no matter where it is.
Yeah, so we try to tell people that once you get on the ice, don't follow right on the edge of the shoreline. Get out into the ice a little bit further away, because there's springs that feed into the lake from different places around the lake.
Wow. In Wisconsin and, around the Midwest, we certainly have springs to deal with, but certainly not hot springs. So I look forward to seeing you in a year, and I'll bring my bathing suit as well.
All right.
There's places to go for that. So.
But what I am actually hearing, because I was joking, but if you are the type of person who is an ice fisherman, you are looking for a destination, by golly, that also sounds like then a place you could get a traveler to if they maybe are not an ice fisherman themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Lake Cascade should be on everybody's bucket list. I recommend that everybody, that has the ability to do it should at least try it and come out, because even if you don't catch the 17-inch jumbo yellow perch that are in this lake, the scenery that's there, the people that you're going to meet from all over the country. Right now, the borders and for the U.S. and Canada are closed, but we have many Canadians that come down. We have several Canadian friends that fish the lake, and every year we meet new people all the time. That's one of the things that we love about ice fishing and doing the things that we do, working with the companies that we work with, and having the Western Ice Fishing Association is just this network, this family of that we've been able to just expand on. So it's pretty cool.
So, one of the families that we have in common then is Striker. So I know that you guys talk a lot about safety, but certainly comfort and functionality comes along with that. So let's talk a little bit about what Striker gear you like.
So I haven't been disappointed with any of the Striker products. My go-to ice suit is the Predator ice suit, but that's because I'm a very active fisherman. I move around a lot, and I'm a little bit bigger, heavier guy, and so I warm up fast. And having that Predator suit is just right for me. However, on those days when it's like really, really cold, and it can get cold on Lake Cascade, it's not uncommon in early January to have -10 below zero conditions. And on those situations, I'll switch to the hard water suit. And I love that suit too, because I can layer up in the early morning, but I can also layer it down later in the afternoon when it does warm up and I start moving around some more. And so there's advantages of having the hard water suit as well. So those are my two go-to suits.
And of course, mine is going to be absolutely the women's Prism suit for various reasons. But I depending on the weather and the conditions, I actually have a hard water jacket that if it's really bitter cold, I'm probably going to don that. But I always wear my Prism bibs, and there isn't anything better than real ice pants that are designed and made for women. These are absolute.
You're making a good point, because there are pants and bibs. So which are you most fan of?
So personally, I like the bibs. Generally, it's colder than the norm, so the bibs gives me a little more warmth. But the new pants are really comfortable as well. I personally, I like the bibs probably the best. They have a great feature, like if we're really going to cut to the chase here, they have a great feature for women that each side zips down, the back opens. So you can actually use the restroom without having to pull everything off and down and go. And if you're on the ice and you're active, that's essential, because if you got to go, it's quick. It's not like an all-day process to take all your layers off to go to the restroom. So really, that's probably, people don't really talk about it.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of awkward, right? What? You're talking about going to the bathroom on the ice, but really, for women, that is absolutely hands down the best feature ever.
Well, and when we talk about comfort, that is one of the things that plays a huge factor, because we all know that moment where we got to go and like your jig cadence even changes and all of a sudden
right?
stops and it's like, what's going on?
Absolutely. And, we're women. We typically have hips. They are made for women. They're not just the stick man pants that you got to get 5 sizes bigger and then you're 5 sizes longer than what you really need. You know what I'm saying? To fit into them. So yeah, they're made for women. And having that hem at the bottom to fold up to your height, that's beautiful. I mean, I'm 5'1" on a good day. So being able to hem my pant and not walk on my pant, I absolutely love it. So not only is it fit for women, it has features for women that we can truly appreciate.
The parts of Striker is that they're premium suits. They're quality, well built. They're very well thought out. You can definitely tell that the suits are designed by people that ice fish. And the beauty of Striker gear and their clothing is that's their specialty. That's what they do.
Yeah.
And their 100% attention is to that. And it definitely shows in the quality of the products that they produce. And I won't go on the ice without a Striker suit, not only for safety reasons, but just for my own comfort and just functionality. The pockets are in the right places. The zippers are the right length.
Having towels,
having the magnets,
line cutter,
to the magnet flaps to cover your zippers. It's just premium quality suits.
Absolutely.
Sure.
And you can see we're all kind of wearing an array of their headwear. So
Yeah.
that's always kind of a fun thing.
Oh, wait. We have them all and we love them all. So pick a favorite. Wait, how do you do that?
And really quick before we move on though, because that your hat that you did just put on, that is an example of something that is from the summer collection. But I actually recently did a video about what I wear on the ice, and I even had mentioned that some of my summer layers I'll wear as a base layer to, make sure that it has that wicking property to help keep you warm. And that's almost an example of something that you can do with the hat, is because you said that you layer them. So
yes, this is exactly what I do. So I have the bill for the sunshine. I have my beanie to cover my ears and keep my head warm. And I have the best of both worlds. And then we're done fishing for the day. We go to dinner and I'm good.
Good to go. Oh gosh, that's awesome. So this has been great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have another favorite really quick.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Tried the glove liners.
Yeah.
So the gray glove liners, I absolutely love for just being out and being boom, 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 boom. But then it comes to a whole new with the new mitt. The mitt that folds over. Oh my goodness. I've actually been in sporting goods stores where they carry Striker, and we're always like adjusting their display, making it look better or just enhancing a few things, and they always love it, which is cool. But if they don't have a product, I'm like, oh, hey, let me run to the truck and grab my mitt. The guy was like on his message, contacting his rep. I just tried one on. These are amazing. They're not too bulky. They fold over. You have finger access to actual fingers and not just the liner. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the new gray liners I love, and the mitt. Those are probably my favorite gloves right now.
That is awesome.
Yeah, we do. We like the crossover mitts. We've been using those for forever. Our favorite one so far this year has been the Stealth Glove. We've had really mild temperatures here in the Midwest, so our highs have been up in the mid 30s, low 30s, and so those have been really awesome because I don't like gloves, and I can almost tie a jig on with those gloves on. Almost, not quite, but I can fish with them. I can take fish off with them and stuff like that. So they're awesome. They don't get wet. So that's a really nice feature of them. But yeah, when it gets a little bit colder, I'll be switching back to my crossover mitts.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So is that our list?
Well, I guess I was just gonna say, we did cover a lot here, but you guys have a lot. Yeah, you guys have a lot more even on your page. So Western Ice Fishing Association. And for people who want to get a hold of you, or for people who want to keep following you, how do they do that?
Just send us a message on Messenger. Yeah. Send us a friend request. We answer questions all the time for people. Everything from what gear to use, what kind of jigs or lures, what things should they expect, information about Lake Cascade or other lakes that are available in the West. And, Lake Cascade is a great lake, but I'm also going to just throw a pitch out there, is that there are many great lakes
in the West. Because we're
experiencing
one, very much so.
You guys got crappie lakes?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes,
baby.
Yes. Crappie are here.
Pumpkins.
Oh,
yeah, that excites me.
So we fished Montana, we fished Wyoming, we fished Utah, Idaho, Washington, and we have many great places that we've been able to fish, and we share information about that also on our page, as well as Lake Cascade. But Lake Cascade is what we consider our home lake. That's where we definitely spend the majority of our time.
It's kind of like going to grandma's for dinner.
Yeah.
Cascade. It's like going home.
But there's so many places, and that's what's great about the adventure coming out to the West. And if not only is the fishing great, but the scenery is beautiful. The weather is incredible.
Camaraderie.
If you want to take in some skiing while you're out in the West or go hit the hot springs, there's great places to dine and many great hotels to stay at as well. So definitely a tourist destination. And if you're really into ice fishing or even open water fishing, come to the West and come check it out.
Awesome.
Perfect.
I know that we will be checking out the Western Ice Fishing Association and even watching your Facebook pages. And otherwise, we will be keeping our eye on Striker and seeing what you got going on there. So thanks for joining us this week. And we will be seeing who's next on next week's Hook, Line, and Striker.
See you guys.
Awesome
Take care, you
job,
guys. Good
Thanks
seeing
a
you.
lot. See you
Yeah.
later.